The morning sun cast golden streaks across the magnificent Belmont estate, its limestone walls gleaming like polished ivory against the blue autumn sky. The mansion's wrought iron gates slowly parted as a sleek black Tesla pulled up to the entrance. Behind the wheel sat one of New York's most brilliant wedding planners, adjusting his designer tie in the rearview mirror. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of his car, his polished Oxford shoes crunching against the gravel driveway. The tablet in his hand held every minute detail of what would soon become the most talked-about wedding of the year, a $2 million celebration that had taken 6 months to plan. The wedding planner's phone buzzed with messages from vendors who were already waiting for his direction. The florist needed approval for the last-minute changes to the ceremony arch. The Michelin-starred chef wanted to discuss the timing of the 7-course dinner. The Grammy-nominated string quartet was stuck in traffic and needed an updated schedule. As he walked towards the mansion's grand entrance, he couldn't help but smile, remembering how he'd started his journey 15 years ago, organizing small backyard weddings. Now here he was, orchestrating a wedding that would grace the pages of Vogue and set new trends in the industry. The estate's marble steps echoed under his feet as he climbed toward the massive wooden doors. Around him, staff members scurried about carrying boxes of champagne, crystal vases, and silk draperies. He'd handpicked each item, ensuring everything matched the bride's vision of modern luxury with classic sophistication. His watch showed 7:30 a.m., exactly 12 hours before the ceremony. The schedule in his tablet was color-coded and precise. The makeup artists would arrive at 8, the florists would begin their installation at 9, and the photography team would start capturing behind-the-scenes moments at 10. Every minute was accounted for, every detail considered. The cool morning air carried the scent of fresh roses from the garden, thousands of them specially grown for this day. He'd personally visited the rose farm 3 months ago to ensure the exact shade of pale pink the bride had fallen in love with. These flowers would soon adorn every corner of the ballroom, creating a romantic atmosphere that would leave guests breathless. As he reached for the brass door handle, movement caught his eye. 2 security guards were approaching from either side, their faces set in stern expressions. He reached for his ID, a familiar routine at high-profile events, but something felt different about their approach this time. The energy shifted, and suddenly, the beautiful morning took an unexpected turn. He noticed their hands hovering near their earpieces, their stride purposeful and tense. The head guard's voice crackled through his radio, possible unauthorized entry at main entrance. The wedding planner's heart sank as he realized what was about to unfold, a scene he'd experienced before but never expected at an event he was leading. The moment perfectly captured the contrast of his world. Standing before a palace of dreams he'd helped create, about to face a reality that no amount of success seemed to change. Yet even as the guards drew closer, he held his tablet a little tighter, knowing that inside it contained proof of not just his identity, but of his incredible journey to this moment. The guards approached with an air of authority that seemed to grow with each step. "Sir, I need to see your invitation," the taller one demanded, his hand still hovering near his earpiece. The wedding planner maintained his professional composure, though his heart raced beneath his perfectly pressed suit. "I'm actually the wedding planner," he explained calmly, reaching for his phone to show his credentials. "I can pull up the entire event portfolio." But before he could unlock his screen, the second guard stepped closer, his presence intimidating. "We've been briefed about all authorized personnel," the guard interrupted, his tone dismissive. "And we weren't informed about," he paused, his eyes scanning the wedding planner from head to toe, "someone like you being in charge." The morning sun suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. Around them, vendor trucks continued arriving, their drivers watching the scene unfold with uncertain expressions. The wedding planner had orchestrated events at the White House, planned celebrations for Hollywood's elite, and yet here he stood, being treated like an intruder at his own event. "If you'll just let me contact the bride." He tried again, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. He'd learned long ago that staying professional was his best defense. His fingers moved to pull up the bride's number, but the guard's next words stopped him cold. "Sir, step away from the door," the first guard commanded, his hand now moving to his belt. "We can do this the easy way, or we can escort you off the property." The threat hung in the air like heavy perfume, suffocating and impossible to ignore. Behind them, a florist van had stopped, its driver recognizing the wedding planner from previous events. She stepped out, holding a clipboard, her face a mix of confusion and concern. "Is everything okay?" she called out, taking a few tentative steps forward. "We have a final review scheduled for the ceremony arrangements." The guards exchanged glances, a flicker of uncertainty crossing their faces. But their doubt quickly hardened back into suspicion. "Ma'am, please proceed to the service entrance," the second guard instructed. "We're handling a security situation." The wedding planner felt his phone vibrating, likely another vendor needing guidance. 12 hours until the ceremony, and instead of executing his meticulously planned schedule, he was being treated like a threat to the very event he had spent months creating. He thought about the bride's vision board still saved on his tablet, the countless late-night meetings discussing every detail, from the hand-painted place cards to the timing of the fireworks display. He remembered how she had trusted him with her dreams, never once questioning his ability to make them reality. "Look," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 15 years of experience. "There are 50 vendors arriving within the next hour. The florists need direction for the ceremony arch. The lighting team needs to adjust the chandeliers before the orchestra starts setting up. Every minute we waste here puts the entire timeline at risk." But the guards remained unmoved. "Final warning," the first guard stated firmly. "Leave now, or we'll be forced to take action." The morning breeze carried the scent of those specially grown roses, now seeming more like a mockery than a triumph. Just then, a commotion erupted from inside the mansion. The massive wooden doors began to open, and the wedding planner could only hope that whatever came next would finally break through the wall of prejudice that stood between him and the masterpiece he had spent half a year creating. Inside the mansion's bridal suite, the bride was surrounded by boxes of fresh flowers and scattered wedding details when her phone started buzzing nonstop. She picked it up, expecting another excited message from a guest, but instead found urgent texts from her florist. "Major problem at front entrance. Your wedding planner being turned away. Can't proceed with arch setup. Please help." Her heart dropped. Still in her silk robe, hair partially done, she grabbed her phone and dialed her wedding planner's number. No answer. The florist called next, her voice shaking. "They're about to make him leave." The guards won't listen. Without thinking twice, she jumped up from her vanity chair. Her makeup artist called after her, "We're not finished." But she was already running down the grand staircase, her silk robe flowing behind her. The marble steps echoed with each barefoot step as she raced towards the entrance. Through the ornate windows, she could see the confrontation unfolding. Her wedding planner, the man who had spent countless hours making her dreams come true, was being treated like an unwanted intruder. The same person who had remembered that her grandmother was allergic to lilies and had redesigned all the centerpieces overnight. The creative genius who had found a way to incorporate her Chinese heritage with her fiancé's love for modern art in every detail. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the heavy wooden doors. The cool morning air hit her face, but she barely noticed. "Stop," she shouted, her voice carrying across the marble entrance. "What do you think you're doing?" The guards turned, startled by her sudden appearance. Her wedding planner stood there, still maintaining his dignity despite the humiliation he'd just endured. The tablet in his hands held every detail of her perfect day, details they'd spent 6 months perfecting over countless coffee meetings and late-night phone calls. "Ma'am, you should be getting ready," one guard started, but she cut him off. "That's my wedding planner you're harassing." Her voice shook with anger. "The person who has spent half a year creating the most important day of my life." She rushed down the steps, ignoring the fact that her silk robe was getting dirty at the edges. The guards stepped back, their faces now showing the first signs of realization and embarrassment. "But we weren't informed," one began weakly. "Weren't informed what?" she demanded, standing protectively beside her wedding planner. "That the best wedding planner in New York would be planning my wedding. That the person who organized the governor's daughter's wedding would be in charge. Or weren't you informed that he might not look the way you expected?" The morning air grew thick with tension. The florist had stopped unloading her van. Other vendors gathered at a distance, watching the scene unfold. The bride's voice softened as she turned to her wedding planner. "I am so sorry. This should never have happened." He gave her a gentle smile, the same reassuring smile he'd given her when she'd panicked about rain on her outdoor ceremony. "We should get you back inside," he said professionally, checking his watch. "The makeup artist needs exactly 47 minutes to create that sun-kissed glow you wanted." The bride turned back to the guards, her eyes blazing. "I want you both off my property. Now." Her voice left no room for argument. "And send your supervisor to me immediately. We need to have a serious conversation about why you thought it was okay to discriminate against one of the most respected professionals in the industry." As the guards retreated, clearly shaken, the bride linked her arm through her wedding planners. "Now," she said, her voice returning to its excited tone, "tell me the archflowers arrived in that exact shade of pink we chose." Together they walked up the steps, the morning sun illuminating them both, as vendors began streaming in behind them, ready to create the magnificent celebration they had all imagined. News of the morning's incident spread through the mansion like wildfire. The groom, who had been reviewing last-minute business emails in his suite, rushed downstairs as soon as he heard what had happened. His custom-tailored tuxedo was still hanging untouched in his dressing room as he took the stairs two at a time. He found his bride and the wedding planner in the grand ballroom, surrounded by staff arranging crystal centerpieces. The wedding planner was directing the setup with his usual precision, tablet in hand, as if the morning's humiliation hadn't happened. But the groom noticed how the planner's shoulders tensed slightly when the door opened, how his free hand unconsciously adjusted his tie, small signs of the dignity he was fighting to maintain. "I just heard," the groom said, his voice carrying across the room. The florists and decorators paused their work, watching as one of the city's most successful young entrepreneurs approached. "I cannot begin to express how ashamed I am about what happened." The wedding planner turned, maintaining his professional composure. "Sir, please don't worry. Everything is proceeding according to schedule. The orchestra will begin setting up in 20 minutes and—" "No," the groom interrupted, his voice firm but kind. "We're not going to brush this under the rug. What happened today? It's exactly what's wrong with our world." He ran his hands through his hair, still messy from his rushed journey downstairs. "You know, when we were choosing a wedding planner, we didn't pick you because of your amazing portfolio or your incredible reputation, though those things are absolutely true." The bride moved closer to her future husband, squeezing his hand encouragingly. The wedding planner stood quietly, his tablet lowered now, really listening. "We chose you because in our first meeting, when we talked about our family's different backgrounds, you understood immediately. You didn't just see a business opportunity, you saw two people trying to build a bridge between their worlds. And then this happens, at our own wedding." The groom's voice cracked slightly. Around them, the staff had stopped pretending to work, all eyes on the scene unfolding in the glittering ballroom. "The security company has been fired. Their supervisor is being replaced as we speak. But that's not enough." He stepped forward, extending his hand to the wedding planner. "I want you to know that you're not just our wedding planner. You're our honored guest. I want you to join us at the head table tonight. I want every single person at this wedding to know that you're the genius behind this celebration and that we're proud to have you here." The wedding planner looked at the offered hand, then at the young couple before him. For a moment, his professional mask slipped, revealing genuine emotion. He took the groom's hand and, instead of a handshake, found himself pulled into a warm embrace. The bride wiped tears from her eyes, careful not to smudge her newly applied makeup. "Oh no," she said with a watery laugh, "we can't cry now. You designed this whole day around sunset lighting for the photos." Her comment broke the tension and gentle laughter rippled through the ballroom. The wedding planner smiled, a real, unguarded smile this time. "Actually," he said, pulling out his tablet, "I planned for some emotional moments. We have exactly 18 minutes before the photographer needs you both for pre-ceremony shots." The groom laughed, straightening his casual shirt. "I better go get dressed then." But first, he turned to address the entire room. "I want everyone here to know, this man isn't just creating our wedding. He's teaching us all a valuable lesson about judging less and loving more. And isn't that what weddings are really about?" As the groom hurried back to his suite and the bride returned to her makeup chair, the wedding planner stood in the center of the ballroom. The crystal chandeliers above caught the morning light, sending rainbows dancing across the walls. In just a few hours, these same lights would illuminate hundreds of guests, and he knew that today's wedding would be remembered not just for its beauty, but for its moment of transformation. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the wedding planner moved through the mansion with renewed purpose. The morning's incident had sparked something unexpected, a wave of support and understanding that rippled through every corner of the estate. The new security team, personally vetted by the groom, greeted him with genuine respect as he guided vendors through the entrance. In the kitchen, the head chef pulled him aside during the taste testing. "I heard what happened," he said quietly, plating a sample of the wedding cake. 20 years ago, I couldn't get hired at high-end restaurants despite my training in Paris. Now I'm running my own catering empire. Things change, but only when people like you keep pushing doors open." The wedding planner nodded, understanding the unspoken bond. He checked his tablet. 3 hours until the ceremony. The staff moved with extra efficiency now, as if determined to make up for the morning's events. The florists had outdone themselves, creating cascading arrangements that transformed the ballroom into an enchanted garden. Word had spread among the early arriving guests, mostly family members helping with final preparations. The bride's grandmother, who had been initially hesitant about having a non-traditional wedding, sought him out. She found him adjusting the placement of candles along the ceremony aisle. "Young man," she called, her voice gentle. "Come, sit with me for a moment." She patted the chair beside her. The wedding planner glanced at his tablet. He had exactly 7 minutes before the photographer needed him. He sat down. The elderly woman took his hand in her weathered ones. "When my family first came to this country, we faced many closed doors," she said softly. "Today, my granddaughter is marrying the man she loves in a ceremony that honors both our cultures. And you," she squeezed his hand, "you understood how to weave these threads together beautifully." A group of bridesmaids rushed past, their silk robes fluttering. The wedding planner could hear the string quartet warming up in the garden. The grandmother wasn't finished. "I watched you this morning, how you held yourself with such grace. You remind me of my late husband. He always said that true elegance isn't about what you wear, but how you wear your dignity." The moment was interrupted by a gentle chime from his tablet. "I'm sorry," he began, but she waved him off with a knowing smile. Go. Make my granddaughter's dream come true. And thank you, not just for this beautiful wedding, but for showing us all a better way to be." As he walked away, he noticed how different the atmosphere felt now. The vendors who had witnessed the morning's confrontation worked with fierce dedication. The makeup artist had created a supple golden glow on the bride's skin, exactly matching his vision. The lighting team adjusted the crystal chandeliers to capture the perfect warmth of the afternoon sun. Even the groom's Wall Street colleagues, arriving early for photos, showed a different side. One of them, a well-known finance executive, approached him with surprising humility. "I've been to dozens of high-society weddings," he said, "but I've never seen attention to detail like this. Would you consider planning my daughter's wedding next spring?" The wedding planner smiled, adding a note to his tablet. He thought about how this day, which had started with such ugliness, was transforming into something more meaningful than just a beautiful celebration. Every crystal glass, every carefully placed flower, every synchronized moment wasn't just part of a wedding anymore, it was proof that excellence speaks louder than prejudice. As he stood in the center of the ballroom, watching his vision come to life, he realized that today's wedding would be remembered not just for its stunning beauty, but for the moments of human connection that no amount of planning could have orchestrated. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting rainbow patterns through the crystals, as if nature itself was celebrating this transformation. The golden hour arrived right on schedule, just as the wedding planner had envisioned months ago. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, filtering through the glass walls of the garden ceremony space. Every detail he had meticulously planned was falling into place like pieces of a perfect puzzle. The string quartet began playing a modern arrangement of a traditional Chinese love song, their music floating through the air like silk ribbons. Guests turned in their seats, admiring how the thousands of fairy lights twinkled among the cherry blossoms overhead. The wedding planner stood at the back, his tablet finally set aside, watching his vision come to life. The bride appeared at the garden entrance, a vision in her custom gown that seemed to capture the last rays of sunlight. Her father, emotional but proud, took her arm. Before they began their walk, She caught the wedding planner's eye and mouthed a silent thank you. He gave her a gentle nod, remembering their first meeting 6 months ago when she'd shown him a simple Pinterest board and trusted him to transform it into something magical. The ceremony space was a masterpiece of cultural fusion. Traditional red paper lanterns hung alongside crystal chandeliers. The aisle was lined with hand-calligraphed signs in both English and Chinese, telling the story of the couple's journey. Rose petals in the exact shade of pink he'd specially ordered scattered the path, their perfume mixing with the gentle evening breeze. As the bride walked down the aisle, phones and cameras emerged to capture the moment. But many guests were also watching the wedding planner, who had become something of a legend in the past few hours. They saw how he discreetly directed the photographers to their marked positions, how he signaled the quartet for tempo changes, how every tiny detail flowed seamlessly under his guidance. The groom waited at the altar, standing beneath an arch of twisted cherry branches and roses. When he saw his bride, tears welled in his eyes. The wedding planner smiled, remembering how this same man had stood up for him just hours ago. The couple had chosen to write their own vows, and as they spoke about love breaking down barriers and bringing people together, their words carried extra weight after the day's events. Just as the couple sealed their union with a kiss, the last ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, creating a golden spotlight effect, exactly as the wedding planner had calculated months ago when choosing the ceremony time. Guests gasped at the magical moment, unaware of the precise planning that had gone into creating this natural miracle. The reception that followed was a symphony of perfectly timed moments. The dance floor lit up in synchronized patterns as the couple shared their first dance. The cake-cutting ceremony was timed precisely with the evening's first display of stars. Every table setting told a story, the bride's family's traditional patterns mixed with modern art elements the groom loved. Throughout the evening, the wedding planner moved invisibly among the celebrations, orchestrating each moment with precision. The same security guards who had tried to turn him away that morning had been replaced by a team that now treated him with utmost respect. Several guests, themselves prominent figures in the city's social scene, discreetly slipped him their cards, hoping to book his services for their own events. But what touched him most was how the couple had insisted he join them for dinner, not at a vendor table, but at the family table. As he sat there, watching the joy unfold around him, he realized that today's wedding had become more than just another event in his portfolio. It had become a testament to how beauty could triumph over bias, how excellence could open doors that prejudice had tried to close. The bride's grandmother raised her glass to him during dinner, her eyes twinkling with wisdom and kindness. The groom's father, a prominent business leader, engaged him in conversation about his journey in the industry. Young couples at nearby tables watched him with admiration, whispering about how they hoped to have him plan their own wedding someday. The wedding made headlines in ways no one expected. Society magazines covered the event, but instead of just featuring the stunning decor and celebrity guests, they focused on something deeper. The story of what happened that morning spread through social media, shared by guests who witnessed the transformation from discrimination to celebration. A week after the wedding, the planner's phone wouldn't stop ringing. His inbox was flooded with booking requests, but more importantly, with messages that touched his heart. Young professionals from minority backgrounds reached out, sharing their own stories and asking for mentorship. The bride and groom had started a conversation that was growing bigger than anyone anticipated. The photos from the wedding went viral, not just the perfectly staged ceremony shots, but the candid moments too. A picture of him adjusting the bride's train, while she smiled warmly at him, became a symbol of breaking barriers in the luxury wedding industry. Another photo captured him sharing a laugh with the bride's grandmother at the family table, proving that generations could bridge their differences with understanding and respect. 3 months later, he launched a mentorship program for aspiring event planners from underrepresented backgrounds. The bride and groom became the program's first sponsors, offering internships at their companies to the students. The same ballroom where he'd once been treated as an intruder now hosted monthly workshops where he taught young planners the art of creating magical celebrations. His business transformed too. Clients now chose him not just for his incredible talent, but for his ability to bring people together across cultural divides. He became known for crafting weddings that celebrated diversity while maintaining elegance. Each event he planned became a statement that excellence knows no color. The security company that had discriminated against him that morning went through a complete overhaul. The incident prompted them to implement comprehensive sensitivity training across all their branches. They even invited him to speak at their corporate headquarters about his experience, turning a moment of shame into an opportunity for growth. 1 year later, he received a special delivery, a photo album from the bride and groom. Inside were countless moments he'd orchestrated. The perfect sunset during their vows, the synchronized dance performances, the blend of traditions in every detail. But what caught his eye was a note they'd written. "You didn't just plan our wedding. You showed us and everyone present that love and talent can break down any barrier. Our celebration became a symbol of change, and we're forever grateful. Because of you, our children will grow up in a world where they'll be judged by their abilities, not their appearance." The wedding industry began to change. Other luxury venues revised their security protocols. High-end vendors actively sought diverse partnerships. Young couples planning their weddings started asking questions about inclusion and representation. What began as one painful morning had sparked a movement. He kept his tablet from that day, now framed in his office alongside magazine covers and awards. It reminded him that sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from the most challenging moments. Every time he met with new clients, he shared not just his portfolio, but also his vision of a world where every love story could be celebrated with dignity. The greatest change, though, was in the quiet moments. When young planners shadowed him at events, watching how he turned spaces into dreams. When venue staff greeted him with genuine respect, not just because of his reputation, but because they'd learned from his story. When couples from different backgrounds trusted him to weave their traditions together beautifully. He had become more than a wedding planner. He was now a pioneer, opening doors for others while creating celebrations that brought out the best in everyone involved. And it all started on that morning when he refused to let discrimination dim his light, choosing instead to shine even brighter.